This is Via Voices, the podcast that brings you insights from the champions of international education. I'm your host, Brooke Roberts, and together we'll uncover the stories behind impactful global learning experiences and the professionals who make them possible. Paulo Zagalo-Melo is a Portuguese native, former accountant, and now trendy remote worker as senior advisor to VCU. He spent the past 30 years expanding global opportunities for students. And now, as president of AIEA, he's guiding the organization into an uncertain and shifting global education future.
More than embrace, you have to become technology savvy. You have to know how technology can help you improving, advancing, enhancing the duties of your organization and the responsibilities and meeting the goals of your organization.
Hi, Paulo. Welcome to the Via Voices podcast.
Hey, Brooke. Great to be here.
First of all, congratulations. The
Thank
transfer
you.
of power happened today. You are now the new AIEA president. How does it feel?
It feels great. It feels like a great opportunity to give back to an association that has given me so much at a time, probably one of the most challenging times for international education. So a time when the world and higher education needs us the most. So I'm ready.
I believe you. I mean,
I like a good challenge.
Yeah, and I think new leadership at AIEA, newish leadership at AIEA with Claire coming on as CEO. In the business meeting earlier, the team talked a little bit about the strategic planning moving forward. And I thought a lot of that was really interesting. And they talked about AIEA stepping forward as a thought leader in our space. And I'm just curious, can you give us a sneak peek of some initiatives you guys are considering in that vein of the strategic plan?
Yes, we are considering, for instance, partnering with other organizations, especially in professional development of not only the positions where SIOs should go to after being an SIO, but also the positions that aspire to be SIOs. The pathway to becoming the leader of an international office or the leader of internationalization initiatives in a higher education institution. And so we want to bring both that network early on into AIEA, but we also want to show the current leaders of international education what is the path after leading an international office, after leading global initiatives. Where do you go from here if you want to do other things, in your career?
I love that. Especially, I can relate to the pathway to an SIO conversation, because I remember when I started my career, I thought the ultimate is director of study abroad. I was, that's my area. And I remember always thinking like, I don't even really understand what that SIO, I knew, but I didn't really know. And I was like, I have no idea how I go from that to that. So I think like that's a really great initiative to give people the roadmap, if you will, to what that could look like. And I think too, preparing SIOs to take even more leadership roles in institutions to carry on that international lens, but at the provost level, what have you, is only going to do good things for us, right? Yes. So let's back up a step. You're now obviously AIEA president, but you've been working in this field for a long time. Tell me a little bit about your international education journey. How did you find your way to this profession?
That's going back quite a bit.
Okay. You can give me the highlights.
So I stumbled upon international education, as it happens to so many of us, from a completely different field. I was working in accounting and auditing for one of the big firms, in one of the big auditing firms back then. And I was looking for jobs as CFO, as a chief financial officer, financial analyst for an organization. And I saw this ad about this organization I knew nothing about and couldn't really understand exactly what it was, because it was connected to the US government and the US embassy, but it was also Portuguese government. I'm originally from Portugal. At this time, I was living in Portugal and working in Portugal, although at an international organization. And so I really didn't know exactly what it was, but it seemed like an interesting organization. It had to do with higher education. And it was this organization called Fulbright Portugal.
Okay, I know it. Yes, I know. I've heard of that.
Yes, the Portugal the US Fulbright Commission. They were looking for a financial officer. And I got the job and I started working for Fulbright back in 1993 as CFO, and then later on became executive director of Fulbright in Portugal.
So fancy.
Long time
I
ago.
didn't know that. That's great. So obviously with that work, you started to learn about international education in that realm. How did you make that transition from the Fulbright program in Portugal to working at what was that transition like to a university setting?
It's interesting because my first goal after working for the time 10 years for Fulbright was to come to the US for graduate school and get a taste of my own medicine.
Yeah.
We were having all the stories we'd collect from all the Fulbright students. Fulbright Portuguese students would come back to Portugal and they give us these stories about how wonderful of an experience they had, how transformative the living and studying in the US had been for them. And at some point I thought, okay, I want to do this too. Because for my generation in Portugal, study abroad was not something that was on our horizon. It was not present in our universities. I'm a first generation college student, so it's not something, not even higher education, something that I would, discuss about at home or anything. So I had finished my undergraduate degree without much, if any, exposure to those possibilities. That exposure started at the highest level when I was working for Fulbright, and then I was seeing the transformations in the first person. They were happening right in front of me, one by one. and so at some point I wanted to come to the US, and then later on was invited by the Luso-American Development Foundation in Portugal to work for them. By then, I had worked for these organizations for almost 20 years, over 15 years, definitely, almost 20 years. And I got a sense that it was great work to promote and incentivize internationalization from the outside of higher education institutions. But I was getting very curious about what would it feel to actually be the one internationalizing the higher education institution from within. And so one day I jumped on the Chronicle of Higher Education's website and I found this job ad about this SIO position at the University of Montana. And I thought they were looking for someone who would not necessarily be an academic. Seemed like they were looking for someone like me, and I said I just applied to that one job just because I thought this is interesting. It seems like they're talking to me, and they were crazy enough to offer me the job. I thought I should be crazy enough to take it, and I spent 4 or 5 wonderful years in Montana.
That is such a cool story. So you were still in Portugal. And you applied to this role in Montana.
Yes.
And they were like, yeah, you're the guy.
Yes. I had lived in the US for graduate school, both in Cambridge and in Boulder. But yes, at the time I was living in Portugal, working for the Luso-American Foundation. Yes.
Obviously, you've worked a few different places, of course, and you have a great LinkedIn, I'm sure, to go peruse. I want you to tell me a little bit about what you're doing now, which I think is a quite interesting role. You're with Virginia Commonwealth University. Yeah, so tell me a little bit about your role there.
I think my role is somewhat innovative in international education. And I give all credit to VCU for that, and especially to VCU's Vice Provost for Global Initiatives, Jill Blondin, who helped imagining this new role. I'm not an SIO, I'm an SIS.
Okay.
A Senior Internationalization Strategist. And I complement the skills and the duties and responsibilities of the SIO. And I also work with in enrollment, international enrollment, with the VP for enrollment management, and work also with the provost's office and the provost. So I add the strategic element that sometimes SIOs do not have the time to get to. It's difficult, when you're managing an office of 15, 20, 30, 40 people.
Right.
And you have to travel, and you have your committee meetings, provost council meetings, etc. It's very difficult for a vice provost, for instance, to get to the strategic level for sometimes longer than half a day or one day. If they're that lucky. And so I add that full-time permanent strategic approach to global initiatives, as well as doubling up on the international partnership building and international enrollment efforts.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's such a cool, I feel like I want your job. So when you're done, you call me. That's such a cool, that sounds really cool. Well, and you're also remote. So you moved back to Portugal.
I did.
Which is really exciting. What has that been like for you? Going back to your home country, but obviously now with this very interesting lens on, intercultural learning and experiences. What's that been like going back?
After living abroad, especially for such a long time, I've spent 14 years in the United States, living in the United States. No one really goes back to where they were. And definitely, no one really goes back to the same place. And you definitely don't go back as the same person.
Yes, true.
So you might geographically be in the same place, but the place is not the same. It evolved, changed, and you did too. And so that's wonderful. Also because my wife is American. So my wife is an American who fell in love with Portugal. And so I'm seeing my country and my experience in my country through the eyes of someone who's new to the country, new to living in the country. And that also changes the experience completely. So it is going back, but it's definitely so much more than that. And I'm enjoying it so much.
Yeah, and I feel like you're probably relearning what it means to be Portuguese or what the Portuguese experience is, big words there, but
absolutely.
You were at Western Michigan prior to VCU, is that right?
Yes.
And you're now doing the strategic level kind of thinking and forecasting. How have you seen technology play a role in how you've strategized for the future for any institution that you've been with? Like, have you been one to embrace technology? Were you nervous about technology? How's it helped or hindered?
I really like that question. It's not even an option.
Yeah.
You have to, more than embrace, you have to become technology savvy. You have to know how technology can help you improving, advancing, enhancing your job and the duties of your organization and the responsibilities and the goals of your meeting the goals of your organization. Higher education institutions, we still struggle with that, which is interesting because higher education institutions advance technology. On the academic side, they help advancing technology. On the administration of higher education, we're very slow at absorbing what our academic side creates in terms of the research, their research outputs. I'm very data-driven, so technology for me is essential.
Right.
I like fast, evidence-based, data-driven decision-making. And when I don't have it, I feel if I have, and we often have to decide without having all that data and all those reports, I feel that if I make the right decision almost randomly.
Blind. Yeah, and you're kind of running blind, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. I like to know and to be able to explain why are we going in this direction and why are we going in this direction at this pace and not in another direction. So I need that kind of information and I need technology to deliver it. And I'm absolutely more than a supporter. I'm a user and I need technology. It's really a professional need.
Well, I feel like offline, I'm going to tag you in. I need an advisor for this product idea I have at VIA that would support SIOs specifically on data collection, data continuity, and then also data visualization and presentation.
Okay, I'm ready.
Because I think a lot of us believe, we know that the work we do is really valuable. I think we know it in our hearts, but we've seen the data.
Yes.
But I think being able to tell that story in your context, in the VCU context, in a visual way, in a compelling way, to showcase that global is positively impacting this institution.
Yes.
And not only should we maintain funding, but we should probably get more. Especially right now. I feel like all of us are having to kind of tap dance for our supper, dance for $1. So I just feel like data is our superpower. If we can showcase how we're influencing enrollment, retention, outcomes of all varieties. I mean, it secures our place in the institution, I think.
You're right.
Yeah. So I would love your advice on how we can make that very valuable to you.
Would love to help.
But I can't tell anybody about it. It's super secret.
Okay.
So there's been a lot, especially over the last few months. But we've always dealt with lots of change in international education. But I'm curious, especially that you've seen international ed from so many different lenses, from your days at the Fulbright Commission to now. Are there any particular challenges that are cropping up right now? Is there a particular challenge of the many that you're most concerned about right now?
There is. I'm concerned with a potential fear-induced reaction to the current challenges of international education. And fear-induced decision-making is often irrational.
Yes.
And so I'm very worried about institutions and individuals panicking, making premature decisions or deciding based on fear of what might happen. And I think that's the main concern for me, that we have to stay calm and very rational. More than ever, we need, again, evidence-based decision-making. We need one voice, and we need to be united, but to be also very intentional, but overall calm.
Yeah.
This is not the first, nor will be the last crisis in international education. And we are going to weather this storm as we're going to weather many other storms that will come our way. But we have to be calm.
Well, you also just have a very calming demeanor. I feel like people can listen to that portion of the episode and just relax and zen out and just hear your voice saying, just be calm. It's okay. Yeah. So no, I appreciate that. I'm one of those people who can start to get very nervous and very upset and want to react right away and do all the things. So I think that's a really, really great advice. Obviously, you're very involved in AIEA. You're now the president. But even when you were coming into international higher education proper, let's say, in the university system, was there a specific professional development experience or resource that you leveraged that was really meaningful as you were growing your career in the space?
I think for me, it was really the networking I had through AIEA, and especially the presidential fellows.
Okay.
I was a presidential fellow about 10 years ago, and that mentoring and cohort, I became very close to the other 4 presidential fellows of that year, and also to my mentor at the time. And that made a huge difference for me, huge difference. I think meeting with my colleagues, my peers, has been my best asset in terms of my career, and that's the one I recommend because you're not alone.
Yeah.
And you have to go out there and talk to your peers and share. The more you share, the more you gain.
Right.
That's as simple as that.
Yeah.
When you're in a professional association, like a professional network like AIEA, you're not a competitor.
Mm.
You're a peer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that people have to understand, that we all gain when we are collegial within a professional network.
Yeah.
And that has been, it was really the game changer for me. That and my financial management and accounting background.
I was going to ask you, actually, I was going to ask a follow-up is how much has your background in that, how much of that do you feel has been an asset for you, especially like making the case for what you do and proving that what you do matters?
It's very interesting because I was working in, as I mentioned, in accounting and auditing and financial analysis, and I was looking for another job because I thought, I don't see myself working in accounting, in financial management and financial strategy my entire career. So I'm going to see if I start going into another type of organization, and from there on, see where life takes me. Well, here I am 30 years later, and I have done, I don't know how many training initiatives on strategic budgeting.
Yeah.
People know me and recognize me for my, the attention I give to budgeting and financial analysis, financial management. All the things that I was trying to get away from have been one of my strongest assets in terms of my profession.
Well, that's something I do a lot of career coaching for people, coming up in the field. And that's one thing I always recommend to people is that, yes, of course, we have a whole breadth of knowledge and understanding about the work we do in our space, of course. But I also feel like there's probably a talent or a skill that either you can hone or you already have that you should leverage as an asset. If you're really good at graphic design, let's say, and, you can leverage that when you're applying for a study abroad advisor job or something and saying, I can also do this really well, or I'm really great at accounting. I have an accounting degree. Yeah. So I think that's a really good tip, like very strategic tip for people to really hone in on a skill that they can excel at. So I want to do a few rapid fire questions before we wrap up here. Just tell me what comes to mind. So the first one is window or aisle?
Oh, window.
Window. Yes, window. Finally a window person.
Oh, completely. You put me on a 12-hour flight and I might not even get up the whole time. I mean, I like to be at the window. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, not an aisle person.
See, you're much nicer than me because I don't mind saying, hey, I need to get up. So I'll be like, you chose the aisle, so that's your
No,
that's good. Everybody else has been aisle. So I love that. What's the last book you read and how did it influence how you see the world?
So the last book I read was an autobiography.
Okay.
It's called Surrender, 40 Songs, One Story. And it's Bono Vox's autobiography, the singer and leader for U2.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
He's an icon of my generation. I'm a musician.
Oh.
So
why did you lead with that? I had no idea.
I grew up with U2 all my life, all my teenage and adult life, and Bono Vox is not only a singer and a band leader, but he is also an activist. He's a parent. He's it's so many. I identify with his roles and many things he did in the world, or he tried to change and changed in the world. And at the time, I was looking at those things from a music fan point of view.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to see his story from a different point of view, from the backstage of this lead singer of U2. I think it was just getting in touch with my generation. I wouldn't say changed my way of seeing the world, but as a book that was not the last one I read, but I read it actually quite some time ago, a long time ago, that did change my perspective of the world.
But it stuck with you.
And that it's Collapse by Jared Diamond.
Okay.
It's the different stories of how several human communities collapsed due to irrational decision making.
Oh, okay. This is very relevant. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, we're creating a whole book list, a reading list for AIEA from all these suggestions. This will be great.
I love that.
And so then I want you to dream big here. So removing all technological, financial, geographic limitations, what's one problem or in international education you would fix like that?
One problem. I think this is probably the dream of every leader in international education.
Wait before you answer. I'm going to put a caveat here.
Okay.
So you can't say every student gets to go abroad because that's our goal anyway.
Yes.
So what's something you'd fix that makes that a barrier?
No financial constraints.
Nope. No geographic constraints. No you can have any technology.
That's a very good question. I think I'd create, and it was probably with technology. I'd need a lot of technology like that, but I'd put more control over visa issuing.
Yes.
So the bureaucratic, I try to improve the bureaucratic barriers to international education that are mostly based on immigration policy and visa issues.
Yeah.
I'd like a lot of technology for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A few years ago, I participated in a debate at the forum. They host this sort of big debate in front of everyone, and we each took on a different sort of idea around international ed, global internships. Sorry, it wasn't forum, it was GIC, global internship. And my topic I was assigned was a global visa. And so I had to make the argument of like why and how we would issue a global visa. And so my idea was to go to the UN and they would issue student visas to every student around the world who wanted one, and they would manage it. And it would just be automatic for any student. And so with your technology and all of that, we can make that happen, hopefully.
Absolutely.
So final question, reflecting on your career, you've come from a lot of different worlds, literally, figuratively. What's a piece of advice you'd give to someone who is maybe earlier on in their career looking to do the type of work that you've done? What's a piece of advice you'd give them?
Go to an international office. Talk to the people there, get an internship there, get a job there, student experience, service learning experience with an international office, anything that is connected somehow to people crossing borders and education in general. Not only higher education, because we forget that K-12 education has a strong role in this. I mean, we'll be much better off if a lot more of internationalization was happening at at the high school level, for instance.
Priming,
And so I definitely recommend getting in touch with people who have jobs in international and the organizations themselves. There are opportunities. I mean, even in my former office at Western Michigan University, I mean, we had permanently 10 students, 5 to 10 students, sometimes more for specific events, sometimes 20, 30 students working with us, international students, US students. They would help us, but they would also start getting that passion that brought us all to this field.
Yeah. Getting back to like the reason we all do this, that's a big mantra we have at VIA, for instance. We want to help people automate, the repetitive tasks, the administrative work. Nobody signed up to be in international education because they love a spreadsheet, except for you. Maybe you did. But most of us didn't. And we want to work with students. We want to develop programming and all the administrative stuff that you could automate or do in a more efficient way through technology. Like, it makes our work more enjoyable. I have to ask one last question. I know that I said that was the last question. So what instrument do you play? Tell us about that.
I play 2 instruments. I play drums, but I also play bass.
Okay.
In my first band, I was a drummer. In my last band, I was a bassist.
And are you going to start up a new band in Portugal?
I'd very much like that because, my bands have been my group therapy. I mean, they keep my mental sanity going at the worst possible times when our professional life is very demanding. There's travel and jet lag involved. There's being away from family and friends for long periods. And my bands have been kind of my anchor in terms of keeping me grounded, because it's nice to get to band practice, and you really have, at least in my case, I have to not think about anything else, otherwise I will, I'll make mistakes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Paulo, for being on the podcast. Congratulations on your presidency at AIEA. We're wrapping up the conference pretty soon here. It was really great to get to know you and chat with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brooke.